Did we? Yes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Welcome, Charlene. I'm excited to have you here. So one of the things I've been doing, and I'm trying to get more regular about it, is doing writing sprints. So Chris Fox wrote a book called 5,000 Words Per Hour, and he talks about writing sprints in detail. But the idea is to have planned out your scene well enough in advance that you can start a timer and write as fast as you can until the timer goes off. And the purpose of it is to train you to get into a flow state. So one of the things I've been doing is over at Watch Me Write, I will do a hangout and screen share my screen while I'm writing, which I'm sure is really boring to other people and makes no sense because I don't write in order. But it's really helped me because it's the hardest part of writing for me is not having ideas or planning out how a story should go. It's actually writing the story. It's the first draft part. So that's given me the accountability of, okay, I'm doing this live, so therefore I have to be putting words on the page. Otherwise, why am I doing this live? So.
Well, I would like to speak to that for sure. And I'd like to develop the talk today around three basic sections. One is general, so we'll address what you're talking about here. The second will be the 5 hindrances. And the final one will be visualization.
Okay.
These are all three of these are applicable both to writing and to meditation. Now, just to cite some of my credentials so that people who are listening can feel secure that I know a little bit about what I'm about to speak about. I have a 7-year background university in teaching writing in a process called rhetoric. And then I have 45 years of practicing Tibetan Buddhist meditation, which is working with these kinds of icons back here. And of course, shameless plug, just wrote my book, Medicine Buddha, Medicine Mind, Why Visualization Works. So there you go. Go to my website, www.soulsciences.net, and you will find there your accessibility to that book. And it's a good one in terms of what is visualization, what is it doing, why do we need it? And we're just on the brink of discovering that. So what you're speaking about with this gentleman's idea of 50 minutes is something that's very, very, very much an old technique, goes back 40, 50 years. It's called free writing. You can take free writing at any stage of your writing, and I think that's where a lot of people got confused and thought it was just for the beginning or just to get your brain hooked up so that you could write what was the language that was coming down. But no, it's not actually that. Free writing can be used at any stage of the writing, and I'm delighted to hear that you found a way that works for you.
Yeah, I've actually been doing more of a stream of consciousness style free writing before I start my writing for the day.
Yes.
Where I do that version on pen and paper, and it's just like a 20-minute whatever I'm thinking about, whatever I'm worried about, I'll just write it down.
Good.
And I've helped myself figure out what I need to add to my to-do lists, or like why something is bothering me or why I can't figure something out.
Yes.
From that, it's been really helpful.
Now that is an example of meditation in a sense.
Yeah. I got the idea actually from there's and I for the life of me I cannot remember what book this is, but I'm sure you've heard of it. I think she published it in the
Writing Down the Bones, Natalie Goldberg.
Yes,
it's amazing how I know that, right?
Yes. Like, I know you know this person.
This is coming out of the flow. I just happen to know that.
I got the idea to do this from her, and it's a little bit similar to a lot of the journaling that the people who are talking about morning power routines advocate. So I don't do it
this way, etc. Because what you're doing is, while you're writing it down, you're actually watching the flow. Now, if you want to begin a practice of meditation without the writing, that's exactly what you're doing. You're increasing the part of the brain. See, what meditation does is increase our awareness. Meditation is the practice of awareness. And from that point of view, when you spend 20 minutes a day writing down the things that are boiling around on the surface, you are practicing an awareness of what those things are. And in practicing that awareness, you are developing a strengthening in the part of your brain that is not subjected to, that is not subject to that kind of squirrel cage mind, anxiety, worries, all the flurry and scurry that's going on. So that happens in meditation, it happens in writing. Now, the difference is that meditation is a little more difficult in that there's nothing to do except watch. So it's kind of that stepping back even further and letting the mind do its crisis and thing that it runs and runs until it settles down. It settles down in proportion to how much we build of the awareness of watching it. However, it is an inevitable outcome of writing when you write a lot, that same level of awareness is going to begin to function in your brain because you're looking at the world differently. As a writer, you look at the world a little more detail-oriented, a little more for what it is you're looking for and for how to translate that. So right away, you're involved in a function of the brain that is not simply, well, I'm here at the party and I'm having a great time, I'm going to have another drink and da-da-da-da-da, talking to this person, it's great. I mean, that's a great way to live, no arguments, no judgments, but it's about, if you're a writer, you may be doing that and also being aware without being consciously self-conscious about it. Oh, now this is what a person in my book might do. Go to the room, go to the kitchen, get another drink. What is she thinking? At the same point, and by the same token, if you are a meditator, you're watching yourself go to the kitchen and say, well, maybe I'll have that drink, maybe I won't. I'll have that second drink. Look at that. So there's a similarity to the two processes. Approaching the two processes as a discipline is absolutely identical. I want to spend 20 minutes a day doing my journal, writing down everything's in my head. I want to spend 20 minutes a day entering into a meditative state. And what happens? You get 5, 7, 9 days in, and you get thrown off the horse. Well, I won't really do it today, or gee, the phone needs to get answered, or wait a minute, I'll just do that one more email, and so the distraction level for both is similar. And so the discipline is necessary at the beginning. And the discipline is not about get it right the first time. The discipline is in persistence.
Yeah.
The discipline is in saying, I don't care how many times I get thrown off this horse. I do not care. Throw me off. I'll leave it for 4 or 5 days. I'm not going to, I'm going to feel, whatever I'm going to feel about it, but I'm going back. I'm going back. And it's the going back that matters in both. Because when you go back in meditation to your practice and you continue to practice, you build up the ability to continue that practicing. You build up the neural pathways that make it easier and easier for you to go to the cushion, sit, and meditate. The same is true of writing. The more that you say to yourself, I'm going to do it, all right, so I got knocked off, let's not waste any more time or energy on, gee, I'm a bad person, I can't rebel out. I'll get into that in a moment. Get right back on it. Get right back on it as soon as you can.
Yeah.
And again, like writing and like meditation, you might want to challenge yourself to figure out what time of day works best for you.
Yeah. Yeah. I had that experiment. I had a day where I was really excited because I'm trying to do 5 of these 50-minute live writing sessions every day. And there was a day when I did it and everything was like, I was in the groove and the story was flowing out. And so I went to bed and I woke up the next morning and I tried to do one as soon as I'd finished my normal morning stuff that I do.
Right.
And my word count had been 1,300 at the last session of the night before. And that morning I wrote 200 words. It was like, I can't write fiction first thing in the morning. I can't do it.
Yes.
And some people can. And
right.
There's a lot of people who always say, do the thing that's most important first thing in the morning.
Yes.
But I can't.
What you're describing.
My brain doesn't work that way.
Exactly. And what you're describing is finding out how you work. And in meditation, it's the same. Some people are morning meditators. Some people are afternoon or evening, early afternoon, early evening, 4 or 5 o'clock. Some people are 8, 9 o'clock meditators. I always found that if I meditated at 8 or 9 o'clock at night, I was so energized I didn't sleep well. That's been since the beginning. For me, meditation has to happen in an early morning, very gentle setting, and then I can get on with my day.
Yeah.
That happens first, and then the day begins. That is only the way that I've evolved it over many years of practicing with this. So you have to understand each of us have a different instrument. The instrument is consciousness. And what we're doing is crafting consciousness. Understand this, because if you get this, you'll understand what you're actually doing in the big picture. You are crafting consciousness in the same way that someone who is a batik artist, or Picasso was a painter, or Chagall, who painted 10,000 paintings in his life, or a prodigious musician. We are crafting consciousness, and it requires the same kind of continual, let's get at it, let's get at it, let's do it again. Today's a new day, let's start again. Now, you've actually pointed to something that's incredibly important here, which is one day you did 1,300 words, and the next day you did 200. And here's a common flaw that happens with beginning meditators. Well, I won't really, I'll get into my meditation, which is supposed to be 20 minutes, but gosh, I'm feeling so good today. My meditation is humming. I'm doing really well. I'm just going to go for 40 minutes. And the next day I don't meditate. Well, you see what's happened there is your brain is carrying you, not you gently disciplining or bringing the brain to the mind. The fact doesn't matter how many words you wrote, Aurelia. What matters is that you did it. The next day. And if you find out that the morning doesn't work for you, then those 200 words have served you tremendously.
Yeah.
So you go now to...
Well, and it's 200 words I didn't have before.
That's the other way to look at it. Now, I want to move on to what are called in Tibetan meditation, and this is a fairly dry path approach, in other words, fairly intellectual, but it's the 5 hindrances. And the reason is, I think that if we just take a tiny look at the 5 hindrances, we start to understand some of what happens when we're writing, and then we fall into the pit, and then we get excited, and then we fall into the pit again. You know what I mean by the pit?
Yeah.
All right, so let's start it. Great word, kamachandra. It means desire for results.
Okay.
We meditate because we want a result. We sit to write because we want a result. We want good writing. We want people to acknowledge us as writers. We want to sell books. We want to be a writer in the community. We want it as a part of our identity. Absolutely the same for meditators. I want to meditate because I want a clearer mind. I'm told that it brings more joy, more vibrancy to my life. I want to be that. And then later on, maybe I want to be that meditator in the community. So we've got a desire for a result. It's called kamachandra. If you know anything about Tibetan Buddhism, as soon as desire is mentioned, we're in sticky territory. So the second thing that happens is a negative state called vyapada, and vyapada. For anyone who likes the Sanskrit Pali. Pali is the spoken word, Sanskrit is the written. And this is, now they use the word hatred, but I'm going to soften it just a tad and say it can be, but it's usually anger, frustration. It's usually this pushing it away. I can't do the practice. I can't write today. Today I can't write. Yesterday I could write. Today I can't write. All right? Now,
so is it frustration with the fact that you can't do it, or is it more rebelling against the routine of doing it?
That's a very good question. Now I'm going to answer you by a sort of tangential approach. Okay? Think about the days when you really feel that your writing is working. How do you feel?
Like
my shoulders back. Right?
I'm like having a party. It's fun.
Yeah. What about on the days when the writing is not going well? Frustration?
Yeah.
Not getting the result.
I'm easily frustrated. More easily frustrated than anything else. But
frustration is a good one. Yes.
For me, okay. Sometimes it's the routine of it. Like I don't like having to do something at a specific time every day. That annoys me.
That's right.
But with the writing, it's not so much I have to start this right now and I don't want to. It's more I want to do this, but there's something I don't know, and so I don't know what to write for this scene. I don't know what happens. Because I don't know why, and so it's more. I want
to get to that visualization, because there's where you get a very stronger sense of it. But that frustration, that sense of I don't know where I'm going. I'm not getting the result I want. I want to feel
Okay.
the feeling that I feel when I'm feeling like the writing is going well. And the same thing happens in meditation. I want to have that experience of what it feels like when I feel like, yes, I did the meditations. I'm starting to move in my life. I can see the changes coming, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we wanted a result. We don't get that result. We get frustrated. And the next thing that happens, I love this, Tinha Midhi, Thina dash Middha, sloth and torpor, which is, am I going to do it again today? I don't want to do it again today. I don't feel like doing it today. I feel like I have no energy today. There's no energy in me today. How can I write if I have no energy?
Mm-hmm.
How can I meditate if I have no energy, right?
Yeah.
Sloth and torpor. And if you hang in with that long enough and watch it, it will shift to restlessness and worry. That's called Udacha Kukucha. UDDACCA dash KUKKUCHA. Udacha Kukucha. Restlessness and worry. Well, what am I going to do if I don't be a writer? Where am I going to go? What do I do with all this energy? I don't know what I'm going to do. What's going to happen to me? Restless. I don't know where, I got to get up. Now, often people will get up and move around with restlessness, which is very good if you're a writer and not really recommended if you're a meditator. You're supposed to sit through the restlessness. And the restlessness can be just as subtle as, oh no, I've got a scratch right here.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no, I've got a crick here. I got to move it. So learning to kind of breathe through that and sometimes give in and sometimes not is part of the meditation approach to Udacha Kukucha. And it's similar, however, with the writing, where there's a restlessness. There's a, like, where do I go with this? I don't know if I can, I don't know where exactly to go, like you were saying a minute ago.
Mm-hmm.
So we can see how that also plays into being a writer. And finally, there's doubt, skeptical doubt. It's called Vicikiccha, Vicikiccha. That's Vicikiccha. Vicikiccha. And what it means is there's no point. I can't do this. Why bother? It works for other people. It doesn't work for me. And that will be applied to meditation. Doesn't work for me. I can't do this. I'm not a meditator. Some people are probably born that way. To I'm not a writer. I can't write. Some people probably are born with talent. I'm not. And then the whole self-doubt comes in.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what the discipline does, and this is to answer your question about discipline, is it sets a platform through which we can override all of these subtle or extreme experiences. Because recall that one of the great depressions in life is called creative depression.
Mm-hmm.
So if you push yourself to do creative work, it is possible that you will put yourself into a slightly depressed state for a period of a couple of weeks or whatever on the other side of that.
Mm.
It's also true that that kind of self-doubt, as we mentioned in Vicikiccha, can sometimes lead into a more depressed state. But whether it does or it doesn't, what the discipline does, and you're right, the discipline is the platform. It's the tough point. It's the point where everything goes like this. Without the discipline, nothing. With the discipline, everything, including all of these hindrances.
Mm-hmm.
And the discipline allows you to have a platform that says, I'm not really going to give in to what I feel like today.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's a trick here. And it's a little easier in meditation, or rather in writing. It's a little easier in writing because if you're sitting down to write and you push your discipline a little too hard, what can happen is it'll flip into a flow of language in which you just express everything you're feeling.
Yeah.
Instead of getting your work, so-called work done, you're doing this other kind of work, which is, I can't write today. I'm probably not even a writer, and da-da-da, and it all comes out.
Mm-hmm.
So you have an outlet for it. Meditation's a little trickier in that you don't have that same outlet. That's part of why I think these two go really well together. I think that writing is a meditation, but it can also be an accompaniment to a more traditional form of meditation.
Yeah.
Comments?
I'm just absorbing right now. Like a lot of it makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
So,
okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
I just wanted to pause because I know I just went on a bit of a ramble there, and I wanted to make sure we're
well, no, I'll make sure I've got the spelling for everything.
Sure.
write and put a little summary in the show notes and stuff.
Fabulous. That would be great. There's a book it comes from called Body, Speech, and Mind by a woman named Cecily Quiet, who was one of my big teachers. And it's a lovely book. Anyhow, I don't want to digress. But again, she was a writer. So there you see, a writer writing about meditation. Oh, well, that makes sense, right? Writers writing about anything makes sense. It's about doing it. Now, you mentioned a few minutes ago about you sometimes get lost in the scene and don't know where you're going with the scene, and then you don't know how to write about the scene.
Yeah, so I'm more of an outliner, but I don't like, it feels like I'm wasting time to write down every little detail, and I don't like doing things twice. And I'm much more visual than verbal. So even though I'm a writer, the story exists in my head as if it were a movie, as opposed to like a lot of people, I think, who are drawn to writing, they think in sentences and stuff. I don't think in sentences, I think in movies. So
yeah,
I can make a storyboard for the whole thing very easily, and then I can break that down further into little like one-line synopses. So I know, okay, in this scene, this person needs to start doing something that has the effect of causing this other person to become more dependent on her and less self-confident. But I have no idea, like, is,
all right.
like how she does that. I have no idea, because her purpose is not the purpose of the scene, if that makes sense, right? Like, her purpose is not to make this other person less. Her purpose is to get something she wants.
Okay.
But like to the big picture of the story, what she wants in this scene doesn't matter. It matters the effect that what she wants in that scene has on this other person.
Well, just individually, I can say that one of the confusions you're struggling with is the difference between the overview and the individual scene. And here's
and it's also a lot of like individual scene in this. I'm thinking of a specific scene, obviously, but this person is a horrible person, but it's not really. I mean, I don't know. I guess I'm having trouble getting into her head because she's one of those people that I don't understand, maybe. I don't know.
Fair enough. And this is a very excellent place for us to discuss this. And Einstein to the rescue.
Okay.
Einstein to the rescue. Now, we think of Einstein as E equals MC squared. We think of Einstein as the great physicist. We think of Einstein as the great mathematician, all of which is true to some degree. However, when we looked at his journals, when the people who researched his work after he passed looked at his journals and his day books and understood what he was doing, they were astonished. Because what he was doing, in order to get to specific relativity, he was throwing his mind up into space. In other words, he was imagining. And coming back down on a beam of light. And he would repeat that process of imagination over and over again until he could do it instantly, in all its details. And then as he came down on the beam of light, he found himself putting his hand in his pocket. He pulled out his keys and he thought, what will happen if I drop my keys? This is from his journal. He hasn't done the math. He hasn't done the physics. He's doing complete imagination work. And my teacher, who apparently my teacher's family knew the Einsteins, and he said that they were all space meditators. They did this. This was part of their practice. And certainly from what he evolved, I have to say he must have been pretty practiced at this. As the keys dropped, he noticed the difference in ratio in speed between the keys and the speed of light. And that's where he started to work with. Then he went back and found the physics and the math. Okay? Now, what does that tell us? It tells us that our visualizations, and again, Carl Jung speaks about this, they have what Carl Jung called numinosity. And what he meant by that is they have an independent life.
Okay.
numinosity, or pneumosity. I think it's numinosity. And it's an independent life. They have a life of their own. And so the practice of meditation, when we are working with, for example, and here I go with my shameless shilling again, but if you were to work with Medicine Buddha, you would start with the bottom and work to the top, or start from the top and work to the bottom, practicing the visualization until you could get it in all its details.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Okay.
Why? Because eventually that deity or that figure is going to come alive in a sense, and is going to be part of your world in such a way that they can give you information, whether it comes in your dreams at night or it comes in your meditation. In very deep meditations, people have reported being told by Tara or Mother Mary or any of the great beings in our collective, or any of the Tibetan ones in the Tibetan collective, being given information and help. That means those beings had numinosity.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they had a life of their own. Now, my experience mirrors your own.
Mm-hmm.
I had a terrible time with the stain, as I think you and I spoke about it, trying to get Diana's character, because I couldn't get her to sit still long enough, for one thing. It took me months, literally months, and I was doing everything else and trying to get around this, and I couldn't. The other two characters, Tani and Mary, came very quickly, spoke to me, knew what they had to say, said it, we got along, the visualizations happened. Diana was tearing me apart. Finally, she came screaming through, and I gave in to her. My particular pattern in writing is usually to write and then revise. I didn't revise her. I couldn't.
Yeah.
It just came screaming through. In 3 days, I wrote all of Diana's part. I mean, I had written bits and pieces before. It wasn't like I came out of nowhere, but I understand what you're saying with this is a person whose motivation you do not understand. Then let them confuse you. Let her be alive in your imagination and ask her a question, or ask yourself a question. What is she going to do next? And just watch in your imagination. This is where visualization becomes a writing tool. Just watch it and ask a question. Because when we do this kind of meditation with Tibetan Buddhism, my teacher taught us always to have a question. Working with Medicine Buddha, develop a question. And the more intensely emotionally involved you are with the question, the more power it has for you, the more it means to you, the more profound the response will be. Clearly, Einstein was deeply connected to what the heck is happening with light. And that was a profound question for him. So when you're in that visualization of the scene, allow yourself to have all of your emotional connectedness to it, and then ask a question, or pose the question beforehand. Now, you referred to something a little earlier called flow. And I understand that's something in the West that people have. It's
a word, I think, that they've given to something that everyone has.
Yes, the capacity for. In meditation, it's called jhana, Jhana.
Okay.
And it's a condition devoutly to be wished for, and in fact to be aware of it. We have it regularly. First level jhana. There's 8 levels. 4 of them are form based, called rupa jhanas, and then there are 4 that are formless, called arupa jhanas. And it's a point in between is where actual awakening takes place. Not that I don't really teach meditation around the notion of awakening as a final state. People get caught up in this idea that awakening is this one single state and that's it. No. You can have an insight that awakens you to a different way of living. You can have an insight in your work as a writer that awakens you or enlightens you as to how the next part of your work will go. That's valid. That's it. That's it right there. Keep moving. You see? We start with these rupa jhanas and arupa jhanas. So what does a jhana look like? Well, I'll tell you a personal story. I'm not much of a visual person, unlike yourself. I've never been oriented to visual. I'm oriented to music and to language. Those are my 2 strongest suits, as it were. But I decided that in order to play with the fact that I wasn't very good at it, I would take up something called batiking. So you know, and then someone built me a frame, and I had a cotton stretched across that frame, and I had the dye buckets, and I had my jaunting tool with the hot wax in it. You have to think backwards, which was natural for me, of course. But you have to think.
It's easier for me to think backwards too. I don't know.
Right? This seems to work. I don't question it anymore. Just go backwards. That's how it will work.
It confused all of my peers when I was in college for engineering because
Yes.
I would do everything backwards from them.
But you would get it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. So I got involved in this batiking, and by backwards I meant I had to kind of try to figure out where the wax was going to go, because wherever the wax went, the color did not go.
Yeah.
And so I was deeply involved in this one day. I think it was a Saturday, and I went for what I thought was maybe an hour or an hour and a half. And I came back upstairs because my whole setup was in the basement. I came back upstairs. It was 6 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt wonderful. And I called Cecily Quiet, who was my meditation teacher for many years, my dear friend. And I said, I just had this incredible experience. And she said, you've got a second level jhana going there. She said, watch, for the next 24 hours, you're going to feel good, maybe even 48. And then she said something that changed the course of my life. She said, isn't it a worthwhile goal to be in second level jhana all the time? Wouldn't that be amazing?
Mm-hmm.
And I went, oh yeah. I confess to being rather hedonistic in my youth and having done a lot of drugs in the hope of getting to that high state. But here I found something that was natural, that was written about, that she could talk to me about, that had the same effect and was completely legal. And it was how our brains work. Our brains work. You watch children, what happens? They get into that flow, or they get into that joy.
Yeah.
They want to stay in it, whatever their joy is, whatever their bliss is, whether it's music, or with my granddaughter, one of them, it's music and dancing. And with the other one, it's getting into costumes and making up the story in your body for real, as she calls it. Let's do it in our bodies, Nana. So
I did all of that when I was little.
Exactly. And what happens is it's a continual state. You want with children for them to have this continual ongoing state of joy and bliss. And it's the Joseph Campbell, follow your bliss, because the mind is healed. And unfortunately, most people only ever get into a state of that kind of absorption through the experience of orgasm. So although orgasm is wonderful and very helpful and very healthy for us, the capacity to use consciousness or be in consciousness in such a way that you allow it to enter into absorption at a deep, deep level. Clarify. Now, because the second thing that happens in jhana, once you get to use it and get to understand it, is you seed it with a question. Now, here's where it turns into writing.
Okay.
You have a question about where you want your next piece of writing to go. Clarify the question. First of all, focus on, just say, okay, I know I'm confused. What is the question that matters to me right now? Not anything I've learned about, not what other people's structures are about, not what I think I'm supposed to do. What question matters deeply to me about the scene I'm writing?
Mm-hmm. So I think it would probably be, what do these two characters need to do and say in order for this emotional change to have happened by the end of the scene?
Okay, here's the problem you're facing. That might not be the scene where that emotional change is going to take place. So you may be fighting yourself. I would suggest.
Okay, it's a step. It's a step. That whole emotional change takes like the entire book to happen. I guess it's a step in that process somehow.
Sure.
Right?
Sure. And that is where the writing and the meditation become the same thing, which is you step off into the unknown. You definitely want these two characters speaking. You want them to have dialogue. That's your question. What are they saying to each other? The next part of it is to step back and trust that they have something to say to each other that's going to matter within the framework, within the weave of your book. And so you let them have their dialogue. And you discover where those themes fit. You may have to edit out some of the dialogue if you're lucky and you get 5,000 words of dialogue, for example, in your 50 minutes, and that's all you get. Wow, what a treasure trove.
Yeah.
And then you get to pare it down to what is it that's important for this particular scene. So I would respectfully suggest that you try it that way.
Okay.
Because as I said in the beginning a minute ago, I think what I would say for you personally is that you are so aware of the overview That
Yeah.
letting go of that to go into the personal, into that moment is a bit of
Yeah.
that's going to be some of the growing for you, is to learn to let go of the overview and go into the sensory details. Now that's the same in meditation. We start out with a meditation question. We start out with a format. I tend to do this 2 or 3 prayers I do. Tibetan chanting, it takes about a minute and a half. And then if there's a visualization process, it's about building that visualization detail by detail. I've forgotten completely about everything else, hopefully. I mean, in the best meditation practice. I can't say I always do that, but hopefully I'm absorbed enough in creating detail by detail. And sometimes the details will change spontaneously. So for example, in this particular picture, we have Medicine Buddha in an orange robe. Well, what happens if one day he shows up? Because Medicine Buddha typically is the only Tibetan icon that I know of where the robes are not silken veils. They're very earthy. They're very much a patchwork of robes in the way that a simple monk would have had patchwork of robes. But what if one day he did turn up and suddenly, instead of that, I was visualizing, and this will happen in visualization, suddenly there are silken robes around him. Well, then I just let that happen and I notice it. Because that visualization is now speaking to me. It's gaining its own autonomy in a way. And the same thing I found in writing is that I show up and I start the process and I hope that I've got enough clarity to focus in on what I think needs to happen next. The actual characters may have something else in mind. That dialogue becomes the important thing. Okay. I hope that makes sense to you. So those are the 3 things that I think are most important to understand about the similarities between writing and meditation, is that generally in terms of the introduction and in terms of it being a discipline, same. Find the right time of day for you. You're going to fall off the horse. Keep doing it anyway. Keep going up anyway. Get back on it as quickly as you can. Persistence will gain. That much I can tell you in both. It doesn't matter what else happens, but as long as you persist, you will gain writing, you will gain in meditation. The 5 hindrances, now you see our minds are very, very tricky. And I will guarantee you, and I just put this out to anybody, I guarantee you that if you look very closely, every time you fall off, it's because you're in one of those 5 hindrances. You've hit one that you're not conscious of. You don't want to feel it. You don't want to go there. So, well, I think I just can't write today. I mean, today I can't face it. Ooh, isn't that interesting? Who is the I that can't face that? And what are you really experiencing? You see, so you take it a little bit deeper. And the same thing happens in meditation. Oh, I can't, I'm just way too busy. I can't. And oh, now I feel bad about myself because I said I was going to. Okay, well, let it go. Sit down and try to ask yourself, was I involved in any of those 5 hindrances? You see? So those things become the same because we're very tricky. We're very skillful at getting away from experiencing the difficulties. And yet, we have to use the difficulties. We have to unfold the knots. We have to untie the knots. We have to dissolve the obstacles. No matter what we're planning to do, be it batiking, be it teaching, be it meditation, be it writing, we have to learn to let those go and get back to it as soon as possible. And finally, visualization. It works the same for meditation and for writing. They are a practice that each accrues to each other. So that's my yeah.
So I guess I'm trying to figure out how to ask this question in a way that's going to make sense.
Don't make sense. Just let me make sense.
So okay. So some of my experiences with meditation has been that it's helpful to doing the meditation, the traditional version of meditation, is helpful to letting go of those. Well, I didn't write as many words yesterday as I wanted to, so therefore I'm not good enough.
Right.
That kind of feeling using normal meditation is helpful to figure out how to let go of that.
Right.
So does it make sense to have some sort of traditional meditation and then follow that with some sort of visualization meditation that's about your story as a way of preparing yourself for doing the writing?
Well, you can. I mean, you could do 20 minutes, half an hour, an hour discipline. Typically, if you're doing a personal meditation daily, it's considered that you would do 50 minutes.
Okay.
Then you might work with a group, as I do every week, and then another group every second week. So there are various ways to do it. Then if you're in retreat, you just keep repeating that 50-minute process every hour. Then you go for a walk and so on and so forth. You could do it that way if you feel drawn to it.
Okay.
If you feel drawn to Tibetan iconography or to, and here again, I'm giving another I'm terrible at that. I'm just so obsessive about this. The thing is, this book really does explain how our brains work on visualization,
Mm-hmm.
why it's happening, why it's helpful and important to watch what you're visualizing.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're changing the shape of your brain, you're changing your mind, you're changing your emotional flows, you're changing everything. So using the visualization, as you suggest, as a meditation practice to practice a very simple figure such as Medicine Buddha, which is freely available to all the public, and just build that figure up from the bottom or down from the top so that you end up including the herb that's in his left hand, we would call it from here, and the right hand is pulled up in the bowl, or it's the other way around. I think of it as the right hand has the herb in an offering gesture, and the bowl is at the just below the navel, and the bowl has an incredible nectar of the gods. And so you can go into that bowl and you can think about what its design is, and you can get more intricate about it, and you can ask yourself, what is that nectar about? And why is it postured at that point in the body? So these kinds of explorations in the meditation hone the mind so that when you go into your practice of writing and you know, okay, I've got this character, I've got this other character, they're going to have a scene. Let me sit back and see what they say to each other. And then I can go back and redo that, listen to them again, and ask a question.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know, when you did that, when you said that character number one, did you actually take a step forward and become a little menacing in your body language? And if so, how do I want to express that? Do I want to express it from your point of view, or do I want to switch around to the other person's point of view who's now feeling a little threatened and intimidated?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So then you start to get both a global, but also the capacity to hone in on the details. And that's one of the great advantages of visualization meditation that you can bring to your writing, because you can see the overview of the scene as well as go into the details.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that it is a lovely thing to do, but I'm hesitating to say, yes, start your meditation practice and then go into your writing one after the other, because I think that they're both disciplines. And if you push too hard in your discipline at once, you'll find a really big blowback. So
okay.
You don't want
that makes sense. That makes sense a lot.
I would think to separate them.
To separate them.
And do one in the morning and one in the evening.
Okay.
To the best of your knowledge. And maybe do 20 minutes of writing in the morning. But if you're working on a big piece, like in between, say you're in between books and you haven't quite figured out what you're going to write next, do a 20-minute writing in the morning or in the evening, and then do an hour of meditation in the alternate, either in the morning or the evening. You understand?
Yeah.
And then once you're working on a project and you're working 4 or 5 hours a day, which is about all I can ever do, that's a really good writing day for me. When I'm deep into something, if I can put 4 or 5 hours in, I'm really, it's been a good day. I usually 2 to 3 is about what I can do. If you're doing that, then asking yourself to do a full hour of meditation may not be, unless you really are an experienced meditator and you feel very good about it, then go ahead. But for a lot of people, the discipline of writing and the discipline of meditation put the same pressures on the mind. And so you might want to then soften up your meditation time to maybe 20 minutes, or maybe include physical exercise as a meditation. Do some stretching, do some dancing, and I find dancing to music is really helpful when I've been sitting in the chair.
Yeah.
And
I hacked together a little standing desk so that I can be listening to music and dancing while I write, because that really helps me.
That works for you.
Yeah.
I love that you are so clear. The thing you are so clear about, Ariella, it just comes over and again, is that you're finding your way. You're finding what works for you. And that's so much a part of who we are as meditators and as who we are as writers, is to take the traditions and then go, but here's how it actually works for me. Just a quick story before we finish up here. My teacher and I, he was a contentious guy, you know. I mean, I didn't like him. He didn't like me. It was clear. That was fine. 30 years, I didn't like him. The last 5, we just really, really had a heart contact. It was so clear that we were just really happy to be in the same room together. And, but in the early days, he kept giving, and he was very kind of orthodox and he had Virgo rising, very detailed toward how you approach meditation and very specific, right? And I have Sagittarius rising. So it's like, well, one day that'll work and the next day this will work. And sometimes none of it works and I have to find my own way.
That explains a lot about me, actually, because I think I'm Sagittarius rising.
Yeah,
too.
yeah. Sagittarians, you got to watch. They're like the Aquarians, and I'm an Aquarian with Sagittarius rising. So like, you never know which end is up. However, at the very end, I was in a class with him. And he's passed on now, but he was sitting in the class and giving this very explicit meditation instruction on breath and how many breaths you took, and then how you meditated at the top of the 21 breaths. And then he looked over to me with his luminous brown eyes and got a big smile on his face. And he said, well, you do it this way or any way that works for you. We started laughing, the two of us.
Yeah.
Just recognized that I have never been able to be orthodox in that way. But in dream work, in deep release breathing, in bioenergetics, in my work as a writer, and in my love of visualization, I somehow have managed to cobble together a pretty solid experience, loving and joyful. So it was a very good moment. And that's really what people need to know, is that you're going to use other people's suggestions.
Yeah.
But you're finding out what, throw it out. If it doesn't work, throw it out. There's nobody else who's got.
Well, and that's like my whole idea around wanting to make the writing well be a resource for authors, is because I want to give people the resources to figure out, okay, here are the things that work for other people, and here is how I can experiment with them to see what works for me and what doesn't, without getting in a place where you're isolated and alone and you don't have people to talk to. And so then you stop trying anything because like you're frustrated because you tried 50 different things and none of those 50 things work, but you have to keep trying because maybe the 60th thing will work, or the 112th thing, or whatever it is, right? It's the whole concept of every time you fall down when you're learning how to walk, you get back up again, and it doesn't occur to you not to get back up again.
And you're a kid. Further to what we're talking about with that is that every single fall that every child makes is a unique one.
Yeah.
The symbol that's on my website is a fractal. And the reason I like the fractals is because they are, and I feel that they are one of the symbols of the new age, is because every fractal is unique. And yet at the center of it, we have the Mandelbrot set, the same thing at the center. So there you have the child who is still experimenting with gravity, as all children have done through time. And yet every fall and every progressive step to standing is unique to that child. Every birth is unique and every death is unique. And yet we are the same. This is a profound shift. And so once you embrace that and you go, okay, so my sameness allows me to listen to others, and my uniqueness means I get to pick and choose what actually works for me.
Yeah.
I love your idea for the writing well. I just want to put a little plug in here for the Writers Circle of Durham Region, which is close to where I live. We have over 275 members. And their motto is, because writing doesn't have to be a solitary act.
Yeah.
We need to cross-fertilize. We need to have people who come together in this kind of forum that you're supplying. So I want to thank you very much for this opportunity today and for your wonderful, generous impulse to provide a platform for others.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for coming and talking. I've learned so much, and you've helped me a lot already, just in the past 50 minutes. So, so thank you, and I'll put a little note in the notes and everything when I write up all of the 5 hindrances and everything. I'll put a note of how my experimentation with using these visualization techniques and how I figure out how to implement it.
Yes,
I'll let everyone know how it's going.
Well, I would love to hear more, and anytime else that I can talk more about writing or whatever, I'm just going to shamelessly invite myself again. But I'm also going to connect with you and a few writers that I know who'd be very interested in your format here at the Writing Well.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Aurelia. Take care.